Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast series entitled Building Green Infrastructure, Jobs, and Wealth, the Prince George's County, Maryland Stormwater Retrofit Public-Private Partnership Model. This webcast is sponsored by the EPA Region 3's Water Protection Division, along with the Water Environment Federation, and is a part of a new Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast series which focuses on building successful community-based public-private partnerships, P3s we'll call them for short, for affordable green infrastructure, urban stormwater retrofits. I am Dominique Lukenhoff, Deputy Director of the Water Protection Division at EPA Region 3, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, we have a few tips to keep your webcast experience running smoothly. If you are hearing an echo, please close all browser windows except for the webcast presentation. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, you can type your issue into the white box at the bottom of your screen and click the Ask button. The responses from our tech team will appear below the white box. If you cannot see the white box at the bottom of your screen, change your screen resolution by clicking on Tools in your webcast browser and selecting Zoom Out. If you would like to see closed captioning, please make sure that you have turned off your pop-up block and click on the closed captioning button on the top of your screen. To complete the poll questions and survey, simply select the radio button to the left of your choice within the console window and click Submit. Please note the tabs at the top of your webcast console on the Downloads tab. You can find some content including speaker contact information and additional information and links relevant to today's webcast. You can also see the Certificate tab. Everyone who participates in the entire webcast is eligible, well, I should say 60 minutes, is eligible to download the PDF copy of today's participation certificate. This session will feature the innovative Prince George's County, Maryland demonstration pilot program, which illustrates key steps you need to set up and implement a model community-based public-private partnership, P3, for a green infrastructure-driven urban stormwater retrofit program. Presentations will describe the process for pulling together the needed expertise from request for qualifications to implementation. There will also be 2 professional development hours, PDHs, offered courtesy of WEF for this webcast. The link will be provided at the end of the webcast survey. Any questions about PDHs should be sent to webcast@wef.org. We have some very special, expert, exciting speakers today, I'm happy to say. Adam Ortiz, Director, Department of Environmental Resources, Prince George's County, Maryland. In 2013, Mr. Ortiz's agency launched an innovative pilot P3 to enhance local business participation in the county's urban stormwater retrofit program, generate increased renewable energy, and increase community participation in sustainability programs. Mr. Ortiz's accomplishments as 3-term mayor of Edmonston, Maryland, which included the very popular, as a matter of fact, I think, Adam, the UN was last visiting, last time I checked, the Edmonston Green Street, a model of sustainability utilizing natural bioretention, energy-efficient lighting, energy conservation, and green energy generation, as well as improved bike and pedestrian safety. Roland Jones, Executive Director, Supplier Development and Diversity Division, Prince George's County. Mr. Jones's agency is responsible for assisting small, local, and disadvantaged business enterprises to be competitive and effective in securing contracts with Prince George's County government and other customers. The program is comprised of 5 major components: procurement assistance, business development, certification, education outreach, and training. Larry Kaufman, Deputy Director, Department of Environmental Resources, Prince George's County. Mr. Kaufman has over 39 years of experience. Larry, you must have been very, very young when you started. In water resources management and environmental protection, working in both the public and private sectors as a regulator, consultant, and manufacturer. He is recognized as one of the nation's leading experts in urban stormwater management, as a developer of bioretention and low-impact development, LID, and the decentralized integrated management approach to stormwater management. He is the co-founder of the Low Impact Development Center, a successful inventor of stormwater technologies, a scientist, and educator. Mr. Kaufman consulted on EPA Region 3's initiative to develop advanced best practices for stormwater treatment and alternative financing strategies for stormwater retrofit programs. Now, just to note, we may not get to answer all questions today, but we have posted the speaker's contact information in case you would like to contact them after the webcast. You can find this contact information and the comprehensive resource list on the Downloads tab of your console. You will need Adobe Acrobat Reader to view the resource list document. And now, just as a way of introducing today's presentations, I'd like to first provide a little background regarding our Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast series and the importance of this focus on next-generation stormwater management, what we also refer to as a new growing industry and economy in this country, and indeed worldwide. It starts with the challenge, the problem of stormwater, which is a growing source of water pollution throughout this country. In fact, it's been estimated that polluted stormwater runoff is not only a primary cause of urban flooding and water pollution, but it's totaling nearly 10 trillion gallons of dirty water dumped into our nation's waterways and coastal waters annually. This has caused thousands of water bodies to be listed for impairments in addition to beach closures. And this increased volume and velocity of stormwater has caused stream bank erosion, loss of aquatic habitat, and of course, all of these impacts are having significant negative impacts to our communities and their economies. In fact, the estimated cost of stormwater retrofits in the Chesapeake Bay, roughly around $10 billion per year in the Bay, and nationwide we've estimated that cost to be about $100 billion over the next 20 years. And in fact, looking beyond that of stormwater and the needs of our nation's water infrastructure, over the next 20 years, EPA has estimated that investment to be well over $600 billion. So the problem actually drives green solutions and, in fact, new economic engines. And why we're talking about alternative funding through the private sector. The traditional approaches to treating stormwater runoff have had insufficient results. The growing local mandates for governments to accelerate implementation of stormwater control measures continues, not only in the Bay region but throughout this country. And as witnessed by the interest in this webcast, by the way, over 1,500 registrants are signed on today. Many communities are opting for more affordable green infrastructure practices designed to treat and prevent runoff pollution while assisting with flood management, water demand, urban heat island impacts, along with providing multiple community benefits. So just a little bit of a definition in terms of looking at public-private partnerships. Definition: innovative involvement of the private sector through a contractual agreement between a public agency and a private sector entity that allows for the private sector participation in financing, planning, design, construction, operation, maintenance, rehabilitation, and replacement of urban retrofit facilities. And this approach has been found to reduce government costs anywhere from 20 to 50% on up. In fact, public-private partnerships have been around, but they've recently emerged as one of the major approaches for delivering infrastructure projects in recent years, primarily due to the grade that the civil engineers have given our nation's infrastructure across the country. We've got a major challenge with the rising need to retrofit existing deteriorated infrastructure. What we've actually found through a number of expert panels in talking to the finance community is that there's no shortage of money. Also in talking to a number of our key jurisdictions around the country, that like New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, D.C., today you'll be hearing about Prince George's County and hundreds of other municipalities pursuing GI as an alternate to constrained gray infrastructure, is that a business case is in fact being built and a market demand is certainly out there. Investment banks and financiers see innovation in stormwater as an emerging market, and if you tuned in to our previous webcast, you would have heard a presentation by the director at Barclays, in fact looking at their $2.4 trillion in total assets as this as an opportunity to support not only in this country but worldwide. Stormwater credit and contract trading markets are also being established, again driving that market demand. Just as an example of what this type of approach can save for local governments, the savings are actually throughout the process. Significant reduction as it relates to procurement, and you'll hear some of this not only in this webcast but in future training programs that we are putting together on this very approach. Procurement, permitting, design, construction, and maintenance. And those of us who in fact have worked on stormwater management for a number of years realize that significant costs also go into operation and maintenance, not only construction. So as it relates to EPA's goal in not only doing these webcasts, but also beyond in looking at a P3 approach that is community-based, that gets those benefits for the local communities while addressing the challenges of urban stormwater retrofit. Our goal is to highlight partnership framework options with the private sector that support a green industry willing and able to assist our local governments and their communities in the spirit of collaboration, public welfare, and trust to finance, construct, and maintain urban wet weather retrofit programs using LID, decentralized management approaches, and sustainable green infrastructure practices. Again, as an opportunity to support this growing, new, exciting industry. Having said that, this webcast comes on the heels of an exciting announcement that USEPA, Maryland Department of Environment, and Prince George's County recently announced, in fact just this last Friday, January 10th, of our partnership to support Prince George's County's model to accelerate green stormwater controls and support local job creation. Serves as a model not only for Maryland and the Chesapeake Bay, but indeed for many, many communities around the country, and why we're also excited that Prince George's County's leaders in that effort are here today to share with you their lessons learned to date along with the how-tos. We actually described this as a $100 million initiative. That's the start of it. But what's really exciting is the creativity and innovation that's going into this approach to make it much more than stormwater retrofit, and you'll hear that today. So I think with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker and turn it over to Mr. Adam Ortiz, Director of Prince George's County's Department of Environmental Resources. Take it away, Adam.
Dominique, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you to EPA Region 3 and also our friends at Tetra Tech that helped make this discussion possible today. I want to give a very warm welcome to our colleagues across the country and give you a warm welcome here to virtual Prince George's County. For those of you that aren't familiar, we're a large jurisdiction immediately to the east of Washington, D.C. We're an urban, suburban, and rural county, a very large county of approximately 500 square miles with a population just under 900,000 people. Within the confines of our jurisdiction are three major waterways: the Anacostia Waterway, which is primarily an urban river, the Patuxent River, which is primarily rural and agricultural, and the Potomac River, which we're all familiar with. So I'm going to be joined here today by some members of our team. Larry Coffin, who Dominique mentioned a little bit earlier. Some of you may be familiar with his work. In the 90s, he developed the concept of the rain garden and was a pioneer in low-impact development, very widely published and imitated. Some of you may have worked with him over the years. I'm also joined by Roland Jones, who heads our Central Services Office and is spearheading our initiatives to make sure that our procurement dollars stay and develop here in Prince George's County for the benefit of our businesses. Now, a little bit of background to how we came to this model is partially because we had to. We're part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which has been under increasing scrutiny by EPA and nonprofit and advocacy stakeholders, that there just hasn't been enough progress on cleaning up pollution in the bay, and that recreational and seafood industries have not rebounded fast enough, and we've continued to not meet our reduction objectives and improve the health of the bay substantially. So under significant pressure from EPA, the state of Maryland in 2012 passed a bill requiring jurisdictions, the jurisdictions that are in the bay, to implement a program for urban stormwater retrofit to clean up our waters. Just a little bit of background. In Maryland, we have seen reductions in pollution from rural and agricultural uses, but it's our stormwater runoff which has been very stubbornly increasing over many years. So that was the focus of this legislation. So it required each Chesapeake Bay county to implement a program and gave us the authority to fund it. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Now, one of the ways that we wanted to frame this as the ball was handed to us here in Prince George's County is that this is a tremendous opportunity. For the first time, there is a very, very large investment in this infrastructure. And we saw this much broader than just a way to clean up our waters. Although that's important, all jurisdictions have many objectives that we have to meet. So we wanted to make this work for Prince George's County in all sorts of possible ways. Our county, like all others, is always looking for economic investment, always looking for ways to keep our people working and to improve their career and income prospects. In our county, we're in competition, very fierce competition, with our sister jurisdictions for employment. More than half of our daytime working population leaves the county every day to work someplace else, whether that's in Northern Virginia or in Washington, D.C., or in Montgomery County, which is our sister Maryland jurisdiction to the west. So we wanted to make sure that these dollars were working for us. All this investment was working for us. So we partnered with Roland and his program to make sure that our jobs are going to be kept here. Now, employment is a big driver, so we try to sell and frame the program that we were rolling out as a jobs and local business development program. The folks who are supportive, whether they're in office or stakeholders or community leaders who do support the environment and clean water issues, are already with us. But to move a program as aggressive and as large scale as we wanted at the pace that we wanted to do, we knew that we had to get other stakeholders involved. So that's why this has been framed as a business development opportunity, a stimulus program here for Prince George's County to help improve the job prospects and local businesses here. Also, like many other suburban jurisdictions, our inner beltway or inner suburbs have been struggling. I know that a lot of folks on this call have experienced that sort of thing with deteriorating infrastructure, very concrete and asphalt heavy, not as welcoming or beautiful as some other parts of our area. So we wanted to emphasize that these retrofit dollars were going to focus on these older communities, on our gateways, corridors, on the streets and roads that people use every day to make them more green, more modern, more up-to-date, and more beautiful. So this was also billed as a revitalization program here for the county. And with that, we received tremendous support, and including a unanimous vote in our county council to go through the program that we're going to outline for you in the next few minutes. I mentioned this next slide, some of the drivers, and I won't go into detail, to get us to where we needed to be. And on this slide, you can see just the targets that we have. They're very aggressive that we have to meet. So many, many hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of tons of pollution reduction, and a retrofit target in the next 4 years of 8,000 acres. And by the year 2025, just under 16,000 acres. Now to do that tremendous amount of capital infrastructure work, we're estimating the cost to be $1.2 billion. So again, our objective is to make this investment work for the people and businesses and communities of Prince George's County. We also wanted to be clear to people on how we're going to be spending this money. It's not going to disappear into some bureaucracy or some program where people will not see the benefit. This is going to result in projects that people can see and touch right in their own communities, all utilizing low-impact development technology. So in this slide, and I know a lot of us are familiar with this, but just some of the techniques that work for filtering our water naturally, but also that can create beautiful landscape enhancements. So you see on the slide on the right, this was our most important slide for selling this program, our most important visual, because we wanted to show people how transformative green infrastructure can be to our older communities. So instead of a heavy asphalt and concrete, old, beat-up corridor like many of us have in our older communities, we can transform them with these dollars to be great green boulevards. One of the things that we emphasize that in order to create these beautiful green boulevards is that it takes a lot of work, that there's a life cycle of these programs. It's much more than just planting tulip bulbs and watering plants. This is about major surgery to a lot of our infrastructure. So, that slide on the right, just gives you an idea of how intensive this work is. So we're talking about lots of jobs. We're talking about people that have to tear up and build this stuff, the bricks and mortar type industries, the trades that have to be involved. Then we have to talk about the design, architecture, landscaping companies that are going to plant it and choose the right plants and put them in the ground. And then very importantly, the long-term maintenance of these facilities. That this isn't just a street project, but this is really a new park system that we're creating in our urban communities that require long-term maintenance, always taking care of the plants, mulch, replacing them as possible to make sure that they're as beautiful as possible. So that the investment in this work does not end after they're built, but is only the beginning, and that it's always ongoing and always a source of jobs. So how are we going to pay for all this stuff? And again, we're sharing this with you, but I won't go into too much detail, but we set a fee on all property owners in the county, and we split that fee into two components. The first was an impact fee based on the amount of impervious surface. So we tried to be as equitable as possible, that whether you're a small property owner or a large property owner, whether you're an industrial facility or a residential home, it's based on a rate of $132 per impervious acre. And that's combined with the second element of the fee, which is an administrative fee, that all properties get charged $20.50. And that portion of the fee is dedicated to the ongoing administration of the program. You see below a handful of examples. The smallest charge is a condo unit of about $27 per year, and it can be much, much greater than that, depending on the amount of impervious surface that the property has. We know that there's not a one-size-fits-all, so we developed a few mitigating factors. There's a financial hardship exemption, which is tied to other assistance programs that the county administers. So if you're eligible for one hardship program, you're eligible for ours as well instantly. You're opted in, so there's no new paperwork for a property owner or resident or a senior to have to fill out. It's automatically taken care of. They won't pay anything. The second one, and this is an important one, is that if property owners do their own improvements or have their own improvements or put in their own retrofits, whether it's a rain garden or rain barrel, we will proportionately reduce their fee. So if a property is able to take care of 50% of the impervious surface and treat it for us, then they will correspondingly receive a 50% reduction in their impact fee. Also, we set aside $3 million for direct rebates to property owners. So if they do improvements, we will offset the costs for them. Our goal is not to collect money. Our goal is to come into compliance with new regulations. So if private property owners want to help us out with that, we'll help them out. You know, the goal is just to meet our reduction goals and to meet our retrofit requirements. You know, our government has a lot of authority, a lot of resources, but by ourselves we do not have enough to meet our objectives. We have got to partner with property owners, we've got to partner with shopping centers, residences, with churches and others to be able to clean up our waters. And then of course if there's a problem, we have a very transparent system, a 311 number that people can call if they think that we've billed them improperly. This is just a quick glance of how we broke out that $1.2 billion. A lot of the upfront money will be on capital, but there are ongoing maintenance costs. Now, one of the things that we're going to talk about shortly is exactly how are we achieving these other objectives. So it's much thought that we're putting into the administration of this program, the fees, and what to build and where, but it's also how we do it. So Roland will talk in a little bit about our initiatives and incentives for local businesses and how this program will really be an engine for creating a new stormwater industry based here in Prince George's County. There's a couple other strategies that we've put into our program to help lighten the burden, but also help us be as effective as possible in retrofitting. And again, we're going to be collecting a lot of money, but our goal is not to collect money. Our goal is going to be to help get compliance. So we've implemented a rain check program, is what we're calling it, which is rebates for homeowners and others who want to buy a rain barrel or do their own work on their house to help mitigate their water. So we'll give them technical assistance, guidance, and then a rebate when they install the facility. We've already helped residents fund permeable paver driveways, rain barrels, and about a dozen other programs just in the few months that we've been underway. Secondly, and this is an important one, is an alternative compliance program for nonprofit organizations and churches. When we were pushing this bill through, both at the state level and the local level, there was a lot of pushback from nonprofits and churches. We have a lot of mega churches here in the county, so a lot of impervious surface, and they made the argument that they don't pay taxes, they are not profit-seeking entities, and this is very burdensome and not fair to them that they have to pay. You know, we explain that we have a goal to meet, and but at the same time we are sensitive to their special status. So we've developed, with their support, an alternative compliance program that that if they meet the goals, we'll give them a big break. So they're going to have special technical assistance from our staff and from some nonprofit partners, environmental partners that have expertise. If they give us an easement to their property, for example, if a church has a large parking lot and give us a portion, an easement, then we will build the rain garden or the bioswale or whatever the technology is to handle that runoff, and they would get the credit for it correspondingly. If they create their own green team, or in the example of a church, if they create an environmental ministry that is ongoing year-round, that keeps a certain level of membership and that dedicates a certain number of sermons and programs each year to stewardship, they will also get a break. One of the things that, again, I said earlier is that, we're the government, but we're just the government. These goals are too big for us to accomplish alone. One of the great benefits of a church, of the many, is that they have a captive audience of hundreds and in some cases thousands of people who are energized, who are motivated, who are integral parts of the community. We can partner with our faith leaders to help activate those thousands and thousands of people every Sunday to help us clean up our waters, help us clean up our environment. That's a benefit to our goals here in the government, to our goals here as a community. So we recognize that, and we want to give incentives and support to do that. As I mentioned earlier, we have $3 million set aside each year in grants and assistance. We are partnering, as I mentioned, with other organizations that have expertise. There are faith-based organizations, for example, that specialize in sustainability, so we've partnered with them. There's grant-making environmental organizations nearby, so we're working with them to administer our grant programs because they have all the expertise to do so. And as Dominique mentioned earlier, we are engaging in this public-private partnership program. One of the things in the government that we have is resources. We have the authority and the force of law, but we also have some weaknesses. Government does not always implement our programs as swiftly, efficiently as we possibly could. And there's many examples in the newspaper. You pick up one of that happening. So what we want to do is get government out of its own way and utilize the strengths of others. So on that note, I'm going to pass this off to Larry Kaufman, our next speaker, to talk about our public-private partnership and how we can utilize those strengths. And there's always plenty of information available on our website.
Oh, thank you, Adam. And actually, Larry, just before we turn it over to you, I actually have to do a little more housekeeping in terms of finding out a little bit about our audience. But I would like to say thank you. That was a great presentation, and actually you've generated quite a few questions here. So we're going to kind of look at the time and see if we have maybe a couple questions we can take to come back to you. So with that, I'd like to actually ask a poll question, and I'm going to ask one of our assistants to push out the first poll question. Okay, there should be a poll question coming up in front of you that says, I work for. And underneath you'll see to the left, local government, state government, federal government, nonprofit, green infrastructure industry, academia, other. So we'd like you to respond to that. Click on the radio button that best describes who you work for. So the answers are in, and we're getting roughly 33% of the audience works for local government, which is great. This is in fact targeted to provide assistance to local governments. 11% state government, 9% federal government, 8% nonprofit. Green infrastructure industry is 15%, and it seems to be going up. Academia, 3%, and other, 23%. 24%. The next poll question: how many people are participating in the webcast today at your location? So if you can click on that. Okay. I think I'm going to just refresh here a bit. So individual participants, 84%. 2 to 5, 15%. 6 to 10, 1%. And you win the bonus prize. Larry will be providing you with about $1 million. So Larry, you can take care of that later. I'm hoping I got everybody's attention. Just in time for Larry. But before we get to Larry, Adam, I'd like to pose maybe a couple of the questions to you.
Okay, sure.
One that's coming up here, you talked a bit about your strategy with regards to working with the faith-based leaders and communities. Have you had positive feedback? Do you have any tips for engaging faith-based organizations?
Thanks, Dominique. One of the things I omitted from our presentation, for good reason, is that Prince George's County is very behind in our implementation of this program. I think 9 other jurisdictions in the state implemented their program by the time we did ours. So the downside of that is that we were under a lot of pressure from your office and from the state to catch up. The upside to that is that we were able to watch the experience of others. And we saw how important it was, just based on the controversial nature of this new program and these new fees, to reach out early to key stakeholders like the churches. So we did meet with them early on in our process. Me and some of our colleagues here presented to a group of about 60 pastors on outlining the program, some of the information that we just shared with you. And they were very unhappy at first. It was very contentious. You know, they raised the points that I mentioned earlier about, you know, that they're nonprofit, they don't pay taxes, they don't seek, you know, they aren't profit seeking. But that was the beginning of a conversation and a negotiation with them. That lasted about 4 months. We had a standing meeting every Wednesday where we educated them on the requirements that we have, that if we did exempt them, like some other jurisdictions had done, that it would raise the costs on residents and businesses, you know, even though that churches have large parking lots and are part of the problem. And but at the same time, you know, we can be creative about how we work with them. So that was a little bit of a wordy answer, Dominique, but the short answer is to early on engage stakeholders and explain what has to be done, and, you know, do our best to get on the same team.
Okay, great. Just a couple more questions, and bear with me because there are quite a few that popped up. And for those of you that are asking questions that are more specific to the implementation, Larry is going to cover a lot of this information, so I'll probably come back to some of your questions. But in the meantime, Adam, another one for you. Is the impact fee reduction 50% or 100%? That was one question.
Sure, it's proportional to the amount of improvement that they do. So if the property owner is able to retrofit, that was just an example, 50% of their parking lot in the runoff from their roof, they would receive a 50% reduction. If they were able to retrofit treating 100% of the runoff, then they would get 100% of the reduction.
Okay, great. And when you speak about the goal acreages for Prince George's County, are you talking about total watershed area or impervious areas to be treated?
Impervious areas.
Right. Quite a few. I'm just sort of scanning through some that I want to hold some off for Larry. And was the there was one I have to ask, because you did refer to to my organization, EPA. Here's one. Do you consider the recently passed MS4 permit a step backwards for your county? I want to know who asked that question. No, I'm kidding. We're going to track you down. But anyway, I did need to ask it.
There's a lot of feedback on the process. Some think that the permits are too strong. Some think they're too weak. In our permit, we're able to basically put a lot of addenda, holding ourselves to higher monitoring and reporting requirements, which I know some of our friends in the environmental community wanted to see. So, for us in our county, we're okay with the outcome, and we're looking forward to stepping up our game and being more transparent about what we're doing to comply with the permit.
Okay, great. I'm sort of looking at the time here, so I would like to, and I'm looking at a number of the questions, so and we'll be able to come back to these. There is a question, maybe just a heads up for Larry, was the fee developed via an ordinance, order, or election? And I think that's a really good question to share with the jurisdictions out there. So with that, I would like to turn over the presentation to Larry Kaufman to get into the nuts and bolts of the Prince George's County approach. And thanks again, Adam. That was great.
No problem, Dominique. I see on my screen there is a question that hasn't been answered, and the answer is no. We will not be providing lunch to the participants for this webcast today. We're just not allowed to do that from our fees, but hopefully.
See, that's the innovation arena.
Yeah, got to think outside the box. Thanks, Dominique.
Thank you. We'll be back. Okay, Larry, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Dominique. What I'm going to talk about today, a little bit about the benefits of the public-private partnership, the P3. I'll go over the WIP2 implementation issues, some basic structures, organization of a P3, financing strategies, and then some important considerations to think about if you begin to go down this route of developing a P3 for your program. I want to stress something that Adam said, and that is that we were put in a position with the Bay TMDL and the MS4 program with the very aggressive urban retrofit requirements to try to come up with an alternative way to meet the retrofit requirements. We realized early on in the process as we were doing the planning that there would be no way that we could meet the time constraints of trying to retrofit about 15,000 acres by 2025. So we've really been looking at every possible method that we could to speed up the retrofit program and to reduce costs. The general benefits of the P3 approach for us, and this will be different in terms of benefits for every jurisdiction because the conditions and needs and requirements are a little bit different. But it was important for us to try to use the funding capabilities of the private sector to leverage private financing. We're capped in terms of the amount of debt that the county can issue. And one of the important things for us was to try to get this borrowing off of our books. So one of the big benefits to us is that we will be able to structure this agreement in a way that it doesn't add additional debt to our finance structure. And of course, risk transfer, what we're trying to do really is to put as much of our program responsibilities, goals, objectives, and policies on the shoulders of the private sector to allow them to search for innovative ways to get design, construction, operation, maintenance done, in addition to other requirements that we have. And I'll talk about the complexity of our program a little bit in terms of all the different things that we're trying to put on the shoulders of the private sector in this partnership. We've already seen, as we've explored this possibility of greater reliance on the private sector, a number of ways that we can save money. Of course, reducing the need to hire the 20 or more staff that we had anticipated originally to implement this program. We won't have to carry that additional cost. We're seeing already about a 40% cost savings in typical stormwater management costs, just in the way that we plan to do planning, design, construction, and operation. We expect that once the program gets underway and the private sector is allowed to use its resources and skills and its ability to leverage the work of this program to see additional cost savings. So we're quite comfortable in making projections of anywhere from 50% savings to 60% savings over the cost of this program if we're allowed to innovate and use private sector resources and methods and procedures for getting things done. One of the big dilemmas that we had in this program was the procurement issue. There was just no way that we could go through our typical local government procurement process to construct the huge number of green infrastructure devices that we anticipate. Probably over 50 to 60,000 devices will be built, and to procure individual contracts for even groups of those would be difficult. So the idea really is to get the procurement process out of the local government procedure and have that done through the private sector, still using our goals and objectives that we typically use in terms of the type of contractors and qualifications. And of course, as Adam said, economic development is really critical. This is really one of our drivers in the development of this program. Everything that we're doing is being looked at in terms of how to create more jobs, build capacity of existing businesses, and to create new businesses within the county related to the stormwater industry. So as I mentioned, we just couldn't see using the conventional local government business model that we could reach the target either in cost or time, so that's why we began to look at the P3 model. Dominique mentioned earlier that Region 3 had been working on guidance and had done a number of roundtables and developed some studies looking at alternative financing, and the public-private partnership model looked like a very promising model to help us speed up in the construction and to drive costs down. But in looking at that model, we really started to look at every aspect of how government does business because we wanted to improve on that. But also, as you'll see in the development of the P3 program, we have to develop standards, performance standards for all these factors in the development of the P3 contract. So we were looking at technology. We had a number of meetings with the state and EPA on the need really to use innovative approaches, not to take the typical designs that are out there in the guidance manuals, but to adapt them for the unique factors and needs that we have in our urban environment. With planning and design, we're really looking at how to shortcut the whole process. We're not going to do the typical planning process where we go out and do a study to identify areas to locate BMPs. What we decided to do was to standardize a number of practices that could be put in different watershed scenarios so that we don't have to do comprehensive watershed studies. All we have to do is to find the places where the various types of BMPs that we're designing will fit in. So we just essentially need to identify a community or an urban setting, have the contractor go in, identify the appropriate scenarios to put in the types of standard practices that we think would be appropriate. That's going to be sort of the bulk of how we'll accomplish this. We'll also do unique designs. We'll do green streets. We'll do a number of signature projects. But the great bulk of the work will be trying to standardizing procedures, standardizing materials, standardizing designs, allows the private sector to use its leverage with economy of scales to drive down the cost of doing of building those types of practices. Inspection, enforcement, tracking, all those things we're looking at and looking at how to either speed up the process, simplify, or standardize the way we do things in order to save money and time. So innovation has been required in every aspect of how we do things. As I mentioned, we're doing the standardized practices. That's really a value engineering approach. We're looking at applying those principles of value engineering to everything that we do. I mentioned the standardization. We want to try to make sure that whatever technologies we come up with are reproducible, robust, that they help to minimize the need for maintenance and make it easy to rehabilitate and reconstruct. Of course, every practice that we have will meet the efficiencies required to qualify for the urban retrofit credits. In addition, just to meeting the standards, we also want to make sure we add as much value to each practice that we can. Can it provide aesthetic value? What are the job creation opportunities, the business opportunities? Are there opportunities for helping to support existing local businesses or to generate revenue from new types of technologies that may be patented? Materials. One of the lessons that we've learned over the years is that standardization is important for predictability and ease of maintenance. So we'll make sure that we have standards for all the materials that ensure reproducible results and reduction of costs. Certifications of contractors, workers, engineers, inspectors, permit reviewers, all these things are being looked at right now. In terms of new technology, we think that because of the long-term sustainability of this program, we're in this for the next essentially 30 to 50 years just to build and maintain what we'll be building under this WIP requirement. There's an opportunity to develop new technologies, opportunity to build businesses around new technologies. So we see a lot of potentially very interesting opportunities for private sector to come in and invest in the development of new technologies. I want to talk now a little bit about the basic P3 structure. But before I get into the details, I want folks to know that we've been, last year we advertised for qualifications for a request for qualifications for a P3 partner. We had several apply. We've selected one partner and have been in negotiations really for the last 3 or 4 months to come to the development of a P3 contract arrangement. The reason why we went with an RFQ is because no one's done this before, as we know it, for an urban stormwater program. So we had no models necessarily to base this on for urban stormwater management. So what we wanted to do is to find the most qualified folks that we could and ask them for suggestions on how they would implement a P3 program. And so we settled with Corvius Solutions, who has a lot of experience with the military housing initiative. We thought that their model and their approach and their experience fit very nicely. So we've been negotiating with them for quite a while now to come up with a model. Now we probably will end up with another unique model or approach. That's why we're sort of advertising this as a Prince George's County model, because we think it'll be the first sort of urban program type P3 structure that allows the private sector to pretty much do the same things that local government does in the implementation of a comprehensive program like this. So to the structure, again, this is a public-private partnership. It is a unique approach that we'll have and structure, but it is design, build, finance, and maintain. Essentially, as I mentioned, we want to try to transfer as much risk to the private sector in this program for the design, construction, long-term operation, maintenance, and rehabilitation of the infrastructure. But what makes this particular P3 more complicated is that it's not just about building BMPs, it's about building wealth, creating jobs, rehabilitating communities, working with communities, outreach, education. There's just a wide number of components involved in this program. So we will, private sector will create a special purpose vehicle or a project company in order to implement this P3 program. And then the project company will contract with other partners for the design, construction, operation, and long-term maintenance of the infrastructure. So just to give you a visual of what this looks like, as we mentioned before, the program is funded through this water quality fee program that we talked about earlier. That comes into the county. We're also will be having private equity, essentially bring in private money. The county and the private partner or company, as where we are right now in the process, is that we are developing that operating agreement and the various schedules required to implement the program. We're also getting input from community associations, environmental groups, and other community-based organizations to help us shape how the program will be operated, what sort of community-based organizations the private company will be working with, how we can tap into the resources of NGOs and other county-based organizations to help this program work more effectively and efficiently. Essentially, the private company will contract with construction companies and property management groups, construction for the implementation of the BMPs, and then the long-term maintenance and operation of the facilities and ongoing public outreach, job creation, job recruiting, business recruitment will be done through the property management and other groups associated with the P3. So the main part of the P3 contract is a project agreement. This is really the document that sets forth the governance structure, the obligations, and the goals of the county. The difficult part of the project agreement is for everyone to understand exactly what the program goals and requirements are, what the county really wants to accomplish, and then to develop agreement in a way that we have a very close alignment between the private sector and the county in accomplishing the overall goals of the program. There are really going to be a number of schedules that go along with the agreement, and I have a slide later that I'll show you just how extensive that is. But again, what's required is that the partnership between the public and private sector is an active partnership with ongoing feedback and the need for flexibility to adapt this P3 program to all the changing conditions that we'll see over the 30 to 40 to 50-year life. We know that regulations are going to change, politics are going to change, requirements are going to change, technology is going to change over this time period. So it's important for us to have flexibility in the agreement to allow this agreement to survive as a living agreement over the entire contract period. This pilot project that we're doing with the first $100 million is anticipated to be a 30-year contract, and the scope you can see is for design, construction, financing, economic development, public outreach, and community building, community wealth building. There'll be the project company will have different milestones to meet in terms of how we structure the payment. There'll be a base payment for substantial completion of projects or other initiatives, incentive payments, and then the ongoing monthly or quarterly payments for operation and maintenance, rehabilitation of the infrastructure that's constructed. Just a little bit more on substantial completion payments. We're still in the process of exactly trying to figure out how to structure that, but there will be a fairly complicated payment schedule and standards, because we have to base this on performance standards, and the performance standards are not just for the construction, but it's for all these different operations as we move through the life of the contract. The operation, maintenance, rehabilitation payment, of course, that will be this reoccurring payment. One thing on the monthly, on the operation and maintenance, we've also looked at this operation and to look at how we can drive costs down. We believe that there are lots of cost savings we can achieve here by grouping BMPs in one watershed so they're closely aligned, standardizing materials, practices, so that we can gain efficiencies in that whole process. The monthly payments are subject to adjustments for underperformance, and again, like I said, changing in the regulations of scope. So really, this is a living document that must be flexible over the life of the contract. The output specifications, we're spending a lot of time on developing the performance standards, environmental requirements, the community-based requirements. This gets pretty complicated because we're dealing with job creation, building business capacity, and looking at how we can develop community wealth by hiring folks within communities, developing employee-based businesses, and so forth. So there's a lot of interesting challenges and the scope of this P3. And of course, we have the financing in terms of the lender's agreement, the agreement between the contractors. All these are actively being negotiated. We've got a number of committees that are working on every aspect of the P3 program. Our schedule right now is we should have all this in place and ready to go in the next 30 to 60 days. So we're very close to finishing this whole complex. And one thing I might say at this point is that, and Dominic, just for EPA's knowledge, we'd be happy to continue to do additional webinars to talk about the specifics of exactly how we've structured this, and happy to provide that information to folks across the country.
We already have that webcast scheduled, Larry.
Okay, great.
So plan on it. Thank you.
No problem. So, yeah, we'd like to help, because one of the things we learned in going through this process is that as much as we understood and read about P3 contracts, as we've gotten into the unique issues associated with local government, we've had to change and modify the standard approaches to meet the unique needs that we have for this program. So other interesting points in terms of the schedules, of default, in terms of how do we prevent bankruptcy of the company, failing to achieve substantial completion, delivery of services, default for convenience. If this just doesn't work, the county needs to be able to get out of this contract. You know, we're quite confident that it's going to work, but you never know what's going to happen until you actually get into it. So this next slide, I'm not going to go into each one of these schedules. I just want to show you so everyone has an appreciation for how complex this P3 contract is, and why it would be important to get as much guidance as you can and benefit from the lessons that we've learned in the development of the various operating agreement, of the conditions of the operating agreement and the various schedules that set the performance standards for this program. A little bit about the financing, just in general, the specifics, the general components of it. Special purpose LLC in the private side. There'll be an underwriter. The underwriter is the one that will securitize our rules and regulations and the fee, and then sell securities to pension funds, insurance companies, and so forth. There'll be various reserves accounts set up for different things in terms of legal issues, default, insurance purposes. So there'll be a special purpose trust with lock boxes to set aside for all these different conditions. We expect to get not just funding coming into the program from the private sector in terms of selling the securities, but also from the private sector in terms of investment in the development of new programs, new technologies. So we see a number of ways that additional revenue can come into this. A few points in terms of your considerations in developing a P3 program. First and foremost, and you'll see this everywhere, is you have to select the right partner. So we spent a lot of time in the development of the RFQ and in the selection of a partner that we felt quite comfortable and trying to negotiate with. But you've got to select a partner who is going to work with you in every way possible to meet your financial needs, your goals, your requirements, your regulatory components. The performance incentives, this is a difficult one because we have some types of performance needs in this contract that are sort of outside the scope of what you typically see. Again, it's not just about building BMPs, it's about community wealth, job creation, and so forth. Governance has been an issue in terms of how much oversight the county has versus how much leeway you want to give the private sector. So a lot of discussion around that. Innovation, as I mentioned, is going to be required and necessary to drive costs down. And financing, we're not just looking at private financing, but a lot of different ways to bring in additional money, partnering with other agencies to help them implement their retrofit requirements, doing work on private property and so forth, crowd financing, lots of different ways that we've looked at bringing in additional revenue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roland Jones, the Acting Director of the Office of Essential Services. And as both Adam and I have said, one of our biggest goals is economic development. It was really Roland and his input early on in this program. He was the one that saw the potential in using this huge investment in urban retrofit as an engine for economic development for the county.
And Roland, before we move on to you, Larry, would like to come back and ask a few of the probably now 100 questions that have popped up from the significant amount of information you've shared. One of the things that I want to do is actually go back to, Larry alluded to the fact that EPA Region 3 probably at least a couple years back, and Larry was involved in a lot of this, started to collect a lot of information on alternative financing and looking at how to accelerate urban stormwater retrofit as driven by the Bay TMDL. One of the findings in terms of a critical path, what are the major drivers to enabling what we are calling a community-based P3 in this case, and this is a nice way to also segue Mr. Jones's presentation, the local community benefits, were in fact the permit itself. In talking to many, to key representatives of the financing sector, the financing sector actually sees these federal regulatory, state regulatory, and in fact the county's legislation to establish a stormwater utility funding source as major ways to attract private dollars because of the certainty that that legislation, that those drivers provide to investors, that in fact assures that this type of service is going to continue. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to share these findings, and in fact one of those future training sessions that we'll include, along with how do you exactly develop an RFQ or a P3 related contract, is to take a look at Prince George's County's legislation, because as one banker stated, it was almost perfectly done to attract our dollars, and in fact, for longer-term investment. So with that, there was a question, Larry, that there's a lot of questions. And by the way, for folks who don't get your questions asked, we will follow up and provide the answers on a website. How much of the $100 million announced Friday in the EPA MDE press release is from EPA, the state, from the EPA and state, and how much is from the county fee? I know the answer to that. I'll let you answer, Larry.
Yeah, it's all county fee. The $100 million is what we anticipate that what we'll be able to finance through the private market in terms of how much fee we generate and what sort of debt service we can pay. So that's the target number based on the private financing structure that we have right now. But Dominic, if I could, I'd like to just address a couple of points that you made in your discussion. The fee that we've set up is not required to do a P3 for local governments. The financing community can structure a finance package absent of having a stormwater fee, provided that a local government has the ability to generate some tax revenue, and it can dedicate some of that tax revenue to the debt service of this. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, and notice I said drivers.
Right.
I didn't say limiting factors.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to make just one other point, is that the savings in this program is not necessarily associated with the private financing. As I said earlier, our unique situation is that we were limited on debt service, so this provided a really great way for us to do more work, not only in the stormwater sector, but in all the economic development activities and public infrastructure things that we're building. So it really enhanced our ability to do much more, and that was important for us. The savings really comes in the innovation of what the private sector can bring to the stormwater industry. Over the years, one of the things I've seen is that there's really been this resistance by the stormwater industry to really partner with the private sector. And I think, and this isn't true in any other business, so one of our goals in this whole effort is to try to change the business model for our industry, where we encourage innovation from the private sector, encourage partnerships with the private sector in order to gain all the benefits possible. I think in some respects our stormwater industry has matured to the point where government needs to start partnering and looking for creative solutions from the private sector. That's all I had to say.
Well, I think that's a lot. No, I'm kidding. We actually want you to say a few more words, because I'm actually scrolling through some of these questions, and here's a question, is what's in it for the private partner? Why would they contribute private equity? In fact, freeing up, as you said, the county from its own debt, and it actually frees up the county to do other types of capital projects. Why would they contribute private equity? What type of return would they get?
Well, it depends on how they structure or securitize the fees or revenue. But the financing part is very easy. They have their fees and they have their financing, their interest rates, and you basically accept what you can get out of the market. Now, if you have a good partner, they'll go into the market and they'll look for as creative way as possible to do the finance package. But the financing institutions are strictly out there to lend money, and they will give you the best deal they can based on the bond rating, the history of the local government. From the private contractor side, what this is, which is different, is that this is a 30-year contract. This is a sustainable source of revenue One of the things that we thought was very interesting and conversations that we had with the business community is that the piecemeal approach that we've done in contracting and bidding has been not very helpful in helping businesses to grow and to survive because you never know. What's different about this program is that you sort of give up the piecemeal approach to getting into the program for the long-term revenue that you can generate. And what we saw is that in every case, if we asked businesses, would you prefer to have a sort of a guaranteed, sustainable source of income versus the chance, risky bidding for a contract, every one of them said, we want the long-term revenue. And this was a way to generate, through the private sector procurement, long-term revenue streams for all the contractors involved in this in the private sector.
Okay, that's great. These questions are really rolling. I'm trying to keep up with them. Can you describe more of the details around the local community and worker-owned businesses? And there are some questions getting at smaller businesses, minority businesses, how they're brought into the loop, and perhaps Roland will also address that. I'll throw another question. Is there any debt financing, and who's providing that? I think you may have answered some of that. And then in terms of the retrofit, how are you determining that what you're doing is in fact going to meet the requirement? I want to see if you could keep up with those three questions.
Well, Roland's going to address the jobs part. I'm going to let him do that. In fact, I'd like to have him get on and do his presentation, and we can cover the range of questions. I forgot what the questions were.
One was, how are you going to ensure that the approach you're taking is going to meet the retrofit requirements, something to that degree?
Yeah, that's a simple one. We've developed performance standards. The contractor has to meet those performance standards. Just as a simple one, they've got to capture and treat the first inch of runoff. So every device that we do will have to meet that basic performance standard.
Okay, Larry, you get your wish. The questions are rolling in. I'll start to take a look at some of these, but we do want to hear from Roland Jones. So, Roland, why don't I turn it over to you? And Larry, thank you very much for that presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the most interesting parts about this is that oftentimes when laws are passed, and we had a law that was passed in Prince George's County surrounding economic development and the development of minority and small businesses that was unique in some instances, that it was different, but not unique in the other instance that it had been done in some other jurisdictions, San Diego, California, Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee. But in the supplier diversity industry, it was one that says we are going to give as high a priority to local firms as we do to minority firms. And as most of you know, or most people know, that when it came to supplier diversity, it was really about creating equality for minority business enterprises. Well, now that this new legislation was going to change things. So there was a tremendous emphasis and focus on county-based businesses. So when my cohorts, Adam and Larry, who are experts at this, approached me about how we're going to go about doing this program and making sure that we cover the environmental aspect of it, but also we can approach our county council and ensure that we are going to be able to ascertain the fund or the fee that's going to be necessary to operate the program. So my first thought always is about economic development. How can we infuse economic development into this? So the first thought was that we're going to have a pool of money, $1.2 billion, that we'll have to work with to help us accomplish our goal toward creating industries for local businesses. Often in economic development, it's approached from an academia perspective from the standpoint of we talk about the things that you need to do. We talk about our current business base, and we talk about what is it going to take to get them to the next level, and all the criteria that people like to put forth as excuses or as inhibitors or roadblocks to not doing business with small and minority-owned businesses. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the experience. They don't have the past performance. They don't have the capital. Well, I saw this as an opportunity to say, okay, we can stop talking about economic development from a theoretical standpoint, and now we will have something that doesn't often happen. We will have actual capital and actual opportunities for these businesses to execute on. So we can start talking about creating sustainability and creating opportunities for local businesses. More importantly, creating jobs. So we had this bill that was passed, the Jobs First Act, that created two new protected categories in terms of businesses, county-based businesses and county-based small businesses. And it also had a second aspect to it that says that if you're contracting with Prince George's County, 50% of the man hours that are performed on that contract has to be performed by a Prince George's County resident. This created new types of interesting and intriguing hurdles or challenges that we had to solve. So as Larry went through the program and Adam went through the program with me, and they talked about the potential that this program had in terms of building an industry, having sustainable industry in the areas of engineering, landscape, architecture, construction maintenance. It created a panacea for me that now we could have opportunities to get smaller businesses and diverse businesses into these sustainable industries that were not your run-of-the-mill type industries, but were extremely good-paying industries for both the businesses themselves and also the employees of those businesses. And we looked at what was going to be necessary, the building of 46,000 stormwater devices, creating summer youth internship programs, creating community employment and wealth. Those were absolutely critical to us, and we would have a fee that would help create these sustainable industries there. Our mindset was that we had Larry the genius here, who had specialized in creating the stormwater industry and a lot of things that go along with it. Adam, who actually executed on creating a green type of environment and industry, and the ability to have a long, sustainable 30-year period with industries that could be created around that, where we could put minority and small businesses into those industries where they may have had some practical experience before, but not to the extent that the funds and the time frame, the period of performance would give them to develop to the next level and to an extent that we could truly be the leader in the industry here. And not only thinking about the Chesapeake Bay region, but also thinking about nationwide. Stormwater management is a key factor in making sure that we have the best quality of life. And that's going to happen across the U.S. and not just in this region. So our mindset was, hey, if we can build it here, we can create an industry here, we can take the companies that we have here, we can ensure that Prince George's County would be the hub of the stormwater industry moving forward, and that we would create economic development unlike what had been created before in this area, and we would have the opportunity to do not only job creation and workforce development creation, we could create an industry where individuals could develop, they could start from scratch. We could create the academia type of environments where people could learn about stormwater management in schools, both from grade school on up through PhD level, and they could develop their own innovative types of thinking and innovative solutions moving forward. So it created kind of the perfect storm where we would have now the companies who would have some experience in construction and landscaping and things of that nature, where they could take it to the next level. We would have a funding source that would create long, sustainable industries moving forward. We would create employment and workforce development opportunities for individuals that are in the county where they could come and learn about an industry that's going to be a growth industry and be prosperous moving forward. We would do things like create technology enterprise zones, develop incentives for new types of industry like green industry, and create infrastructure that's desperately needed in a lot of our communities, that where we would not only create a beautification program, but we would ensure that individuals living in those communities would have the best possible infrastructure that leads to the kind of quality of life that we wanted. We would also create a kind of incentive-driven type of environment where other companies would want to leave our neighboring jurisdictions, which we would love dearly, and have them move into Prince George's County and create the kind of tax base that we're looking for. We want to increase our commercial tax base. We want to give opportunities for individuals that live here and that work here that have put forth the fortitude that's necessary to be entrepreneurs to be successful here. We also want to create mentoring opportunities where the private partner would bring in their expertise, industry best practices, and be able to disperse that to the smaller companies that are here such that they could grow and they could mentor someone coming behind them. And we would have perpetual motion of economic development here in Prince George's County, and we would set the standard about how to use a P3, how to use a economic development opportunity that would turn it into a world-class, sustainable, industry-driven quality of life and quality of workspace. So these are the things that we look for. These are the things that we took to our county council. These are the things that we promulgated to individuals, not only to the county council and to the politicians, but we also did lots of outreach to our small and minority-owned businesses, to the other businesses that were here, to get them to understand what the potential is. This is dynamic potential that hadn't existed before and probably won't exist for a long time again moving forward, where you have all of the elements to line up in the right sequence, in the right space, where you have the intelligence and expertise of the county government and individuals within the county government, where they've actually executed on this, and where you can solve a very critical need, cleaning our water system.
Great. I'm sorry, did I interrupt too early?
No, you're fine.
Great. Oh, thank you so much, Roland. And I know you had to leave early, so we've got a number of questions coming in.
I'm fine.
And I wanted to make sure that any folks out there that have questions more specific to your presentation, that they send those through now. Here's a question, if you've got a little time.
Sure.
And Larry and Adam, don't go anywhere. We've got quite a few. How many project companies do you estimate you'll work with? And another one maybe connected to that was working with nonprofits and other community-based groups. Maybe if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I'll answer the second question first. With the Jobs First legislation, they made nonprofits eligible to be certified as county-based businesses. So the nonprofits have ample opportunity to come forth and be able to provide their services, whether it's the kind of the hardcore services, the engineering, the landscaping, things of that nature. But they also could come forth and provide assistance with workforce development, which a lot of nonprofits have that capability, where they can help with the workforce development and guide people, and also with the entrepreneurial type of aspect. In terms of the number of companies, we aren't certain how many there could be. There are a lot of construction companies here in the Washington metropolitan region that do various things, everything from construction management to the various trades that are involved in construction. So the number could be unlimited. We also advocate, too, that we have joint ventures and partnerships among various companies that they could get together and say, I can do one aspect of what's necessary. Let me go find an equivalent partner that can do another aspect, and they make themselves a more fortified team and a more interesting entity when it comes forward to looking for potential opportunities that could be sustainable for them. And they may not want to just work in this region, but here again, this is going to grow. As you well know, there are going to be other opportunities countrywide. So we want to ensure that we create the industry here and that we are the hub of it and that people will come back here. But we also want people to take that skill set and be able to distribute it other places and grow those opportunities.
I think that's a great approach, and also recognition that there are numerous other areas around the country that are trying to drive, the same types of solutions, and starting to grow that capacity as a country. We also know, in looking at stormwater management and management services, that the U.S. actually leads as compared to other parts of the world, that in fact it's a good export. And I think we also have a number of international countries on the call today. So this speaks to the fact that we've got to start to connect up and create some momentum. Another question: is the county's Economic Development Corporation been involved in this activity?
Yes, they have been. We work together collaboratively. There are a number of different agencies or divisions that work collaboratively together when it comes to anything regarding economic development, and we ensure that we make everyone knowledgeable about the opportunities that are coming up. We want to try to get the best and brightest to think about how do we move the county forward from an economic development standpoint. So yes, they've been involved.
I think it's great too that you're collectively sort of taking an approach, as Adam indicated earlier, economic revitalization. It's reinvention. It's a retrofit industry, and I want to go back to a question that had popped up with regards to the reference of the $1.2 billion, and I'm not sure any of you can answer this one. Is the $1.2 billion cost the total cost to comply with the TMDL and MS4 requirements? And if so, for how many permit cycles is that cost? I'm going to connect that with this approach, and why does it help accelerate implementation? Larry, maybe you want to.
Okay, so as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, this $1.2 billion is associated with the watershed implementation strategy, and that WIP strategy is solely associated with the Bay TMDL requirements. So we have a waste load allocation in the county that we have to address and remove. Adam showed you those slides earlier. In our plan, the $1.2 billion or so is what we estimated using conventional approaches to meet that waste load allocation requirement. The ongoing requirements on the MS4 permit are sort of cranked into this, but mainly that $1 billion price tag comes with the Bay TMDL requirement.
Okay, here's another one for Roland. Does Prince George's County have a business mentor program for minority businesses in environmental engineering? Maybe talking to some of growing the capacity on the technical side as it relates to these types of projects.
We have a program called the Business Development Reserve Program. It's not structured specifically for engineering, any type of engineering. It's structured as a business development program. We have 50 participants that we are putting in the program that applied for it and were selected to be in it. We're spending about, the county is putting up the money, and we're spending about $10,000 per participating company. It has two elements to it. One is a educational academia type of environment where we have subject matter expertise come in and give instruction regarding things like finance, accounting, business management, marketing, sales, all the elements that are necessary to have a successful business. And the other part of it is that we have restricted procurements that only members of that program can bid on. So in some cases, we will ask each agency to provide us with procurements that they're getting ready to put forth, and we will have it be restricted to only members of the BDRP program can bid on them. So it's a two-part program. One aspect of it is that we need to educate you and get you to the level where you can be competent and compete. And the other aspect of it is we need to give you something to compete on. So we do have a business development program. From that perspective, it is not specific to any particular industry.
Thanks. That makes sense. That's great.
The P3 will also have a program that will be more specific to the aspects of the stormwater management program.
Oh, that's great. A little bit of a different question. What is the incentive for private property owners to allow another company to install or retrofit a stormwater facility on their property? And in fact, you can address that however you'd like, but obviously this gets to private property owners. Adam or Larry or Roland, free for all now.
Okay. Sorry, we're just playing musical chairs here as we switch to the speaker. So under our stormwater fee program, Adam mentioned the rebate program. So property owners can get a reduction in their fee. So there's an economic incentive there for property owners to retrofit their properties. It may not be, a big driver, but there will be a number of people that will want to take advantage of the opportunity to retrofit their property. So what we envision is that there will be private companies. There could be a component of the P3 work that would actually go out and do that work. And I also mentioned that there was a $3 million set aside for direct grants. One of the ways we envision that grant program working, again, in collaboration with our faith-based community and the alternative compliance, is that if they give us the easements to their property, we can go in and build retrofits, get our acreage, impervious acres requirements satisfied, and they would get their fees reduced. So there are lots of incentives that we've built in for private property owners to reduce their fees, to get grants, and just for their own interest in trying to improve the conditions of our receiving waters.
Great. Another question is to describe what type of improvements one might envision for a defined sub-watershed. So I guess this is, beyond that of a site, perhaps. Would it be you did mention green streets. So, for example, bioinfiltration units along major roadways, just perhaps to talk about the design at a larger scale.
Yeah, so we have the whole suite of typical green infrastructure practices and strategies for green streets. We'll be working on that. The WIP plan that we did also identifies other types of retrofit strategies that we get credit for to meet our acreage control. And those include stream restoration strategies, retrofitting stormwater ponds, reforestation, all this sort of things. So we'll be looking at the whole suite of urban retrofit techniques with an emphasis on green infrastructure, because we really want our inner Beltway communities in need of some support and revitalization. We really want to invest in those areas the most. So the bulk of the work will be green infrastructure. Now, since this is really geared at meeting the retrofit acres requirements, we haven't yet determined whether or not we're going to go in and do all this in one watershed to try to restore it. It's most likely going to be spread out in terms of the economic benefits to communities. So we'll focus on, we already have communities that we've identified in need of investment, and so a lot of the work will take place in those communities.
Here's a bit of a request, I think, for clarification, Larry. This gets back to the $1.2 billion that the county's estimated to meet the Bay TMDL requirements. The question is, does the MS4 permit require any other? It appears that the $1.2 billion is for compliance with Bay TMDL requirements. Does the MS4 permit require any other type of stormwater retrofit requirements? I think to explain this, they're directly connected. The Bay requirements actually have been translated by the state into the permit requirements, and maybe you want to kind of close that gap.
Yeah, they're really the same. Under our MS4 permit, we're required to retrofit a certain percentage of uncontrolled acreage. So if we meet our goals for the TMDL, we're also meeting our MS4 requirements. But the magnitude of the program is really based on the study that we did to ensure that we meet the Bay waste load allocation that we have.
And so to follow up on that, the Bay TMDL waste load allocations are supposed to be met by 2025, 11 years from now. So why are you talking about a 30-year contract?
Because the important part of urban retrofit and of any stormwater management device is the long-term maintenance. None of the systems that we'll be building can just be built and left in place. So the 30 years is really for the long-term operation, maintenance, rehabilitation of the system. That's really the heart of the reason why we want to do this long-term. Plus, we have the debt service that will last for 20 or 30 years in order to pay the private securities on.
It actually gets at the whole sustainability factor.
Yeah.
And that your permit, while it's a 5-year permit, the permit doesn't go away. And the permit actually translates what is required in the Bay TMDL waste load allocation. So it's sort of interesting. There's a mix of questions here that get any. Go ahead.
Yeah, just on the retrofit thing. So what we see that in order to restore our waters is that the retrofit program will be an ongoing program forever until we've actually created this massive new green infrastructure to treat and control those uncontrolled urban areas. Our challenge here in Prince George's County is the bulk of our development occurred after World War II and before 1980, before there were any stormwater requirements. So we have a huge amount of work to do to retrofit our older, uncontrolled urban areas.
And in working with, through a private partnership to do this, how do you ensure that these projects will, in fact, achieve compliance?
So we have the standards that we put in place. We have technologies that we feel are robust and have been tested over the years. There are inspection requirements. There are performance requirements. So there are certification requirements on the media that we might use. And so we have the long-term maintenance requirements. So once we put something in the ground, there will be ongoing operation, maintenance, periodic inspection required to ensure the system functions as designed way into the future.
And maybe along with that, could you perhaps identify how you really believe, particularly in looking at the variety of conventional P3s out there. And we know that someone asked the question of, why did you use public-private partnership? That's already people, planet, profit. Change it. Maybe we will. Maybe it's partnership, partnership, partnership. But given that really public-private partnerships and that terminology we didn't invent, it's been around for a while. Major infrastructure sectors have utilized this. We had our last webcast, which was on a very innovative approach that the Department of Defense has been using successfully for 10 years, and in fact, they're now looking at all their installations. Why do you think this approach, this retrofit project approach, is different than conventional P3s? What do you see as the most unique aspects about it? And I know you've gone through a number of those, but I just want to ask that question.
So what's unique about this is that nobody has done a programmatic partnership like this before. No one's really looked at developing a contract that exactly aligns the government's interests with the private sector. This is sort of the challenge that we're faced with. We could have let a contract out to do this, but what we wouldn't get is we wouldn't get that collaborative effort, that flexibility, the alignment of goals, the interest in economic development, the outreach, the education, the capacity building for businesses, just the interaction with the community. We want this contract with the private sector, we want it to be such that the private sector is acting as if it was the government to achieve all the goals that government would like to achieve. Now that's a big challenge, but nobody that I know of and all the research that I've done has actually tried to do a P3 partnership like this in terms of meeting all the programmatic goals and objectives of government. And that is also bringing in the stakeholders within the communities and objectives too. That's why this makes this whole thing a little bit unique. We're not building a widget, we're not building a facility, we're building a program. We're recreating communities, we're recreating economic opportunities, we're developing business opportunities, and trying to revitalize these areas that are in need of help.
And thus why we made a major press release announcement, because we do recognize that this is a paradigm shift, but we do need new solutions. And it's going to require an overhaul, as you've indicated, as our three speakers today have indicated, looking across the board at the county government approaches, looking from procurement through operation and maintenance. And we certainly applaud you for doing that. Here's a question along those lines. I am in a community that does not have a quantifiable pollutant reduction requirement. Can a model like this work for me? What obstacles might we encounter? And I'll lead with that by saying some communities, and our former mayor of Edmonston can speak to that, are actually looking, beyond that requirement, and in fact, what this type of approach can do for revitalization, but also other benefits to the community. That aside, I want to get back to the issue on quantifiable pollutant reductions and drivers. Can a model like this work for those types of communities?
This is Adam. My answer is yes. I think we're sophisticated enough in our approach to public policy and addressing all the challenges in our communities that we know that they can't be siloed. They're interconnected. So although there might not be a hard and fast nitrogen reduction target, there are, to go back to the concept I introduced at the beginning, multiple objectives we have to meet as governments. So, I'm pausing a second because I'm just thinking of the complete streets movement. It's a push in some sectors, mostly infrastructure and smart growth sectors, to do as much as we can with our dollars. So, for example, if we're fixing up a road, instead of just putting fresh asphalt on it, why don't we go the extra effort to add a bike lane? Why don't we go the extra effort to ensure pedestrian safety? why don't we go the extra effort to make sure that the lighting is efficient, but also bright enough to provide public safety benefits? And also, tying in with our conversation today, why don't we make the extra effort, since we're there anyway, tearing up the old infrastructure to put in stormwater controls? And at the end of the day, there's, precious few dollars, that we have to spend in government. So, why don't we align and make sure that we're getting as much bang for the buck and provide as much enhancement as possible? I mean, for, public space is public space. We narrowly have thought of roadways as just places for cars, but in fact, it's a public space just like a park or a community center. And I think the onus is on us, the government in this time in our history, to really think more creatively that if we're spending money, how do we do it in a broad sense that truly enhances the community for the full benefit of the community? Not necessarily cars where they have spaces to park in or places to drive, but that really uplift the neighborhoods that we serve.
And along those lines, as we've looked at approaches in different communities, finding the ability to create efficiencies by aligning, for example, with Green Streets and our Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns effort, we're actually providing on EPA and the state support for these green infrastructure-driven designs with street resurfacing. So when a local community gets its resurfacing dollars, they actually see for very little additional dollars they can achieve through green infrastructure those multiple benefits that you just outlined. And in fact, you did that as mayor of Edmonston, and Edmonston and many communities in the Anacostia and beyond, certainly around this country. I think it's smart management that we're seeing, and it's very driven by local quality of life.
Yeah, and there's many examples. I mean, Portland has done great work. Greensburg, Kansas has done great work. There's a lot of others, and the EPA has been very supportive. And, a little bit of investment in pedestrian infrastructure creates more foot traffic, which creates more opportunity for retail businesses to have people walking in. It attracts more people to recreational facilities, gets them outside so people are healthier, more engaged in their communities, people meet their neighbors. Likewise with the stormwater stuff, it's less remediation that we have to do down the road someplace else. It's less localized flooding because, the multiplier effect of having these small localized treatment areas keep volumes downstream. So, there's lots of benefits and lots of goals. Having better lighting or better pedestrian safety cuts down on public safety expenses, emergency visits, stuff like that. So, we have to connect dots. We have to work across agencies and achieve multiple objectives with the resources that we have.
So along those lines, I just want to share with everyone, because I know we're running up close to the ending here, the time period, is that we are working on, with our partners, we, EPA Region 3 and other partners, are working on a training package, but that's going to start actually with a self-assessment tool that asks the question, is a P3 right for me, and am I ready for a P3, that gets to a number of the questions that are being asked, including, do you need, a stormwater utility fee in place, and those kinds of things that will continue to benefit from the experiences of Prince George's County, and also as we move out, EPA moves out to work with other partnering communities to sort of vet what we think may work, but how those challenges out there that you don't necessarily plan for, and I know our Prince George's County partners can talk to that, how they were addressed. So I want everyone to certainly look forward to that. I certainly want to reiterate that I think we are up to, I don't know, maybe 200 questions here. And they're all really good questions. We're going to try to summarize that and work to provide those answers to everyone in the near future. And I'd also like to highlight, before getting to the final thing that I know Amber Siegel, and I want to thank Tetra Tech, wants to make sure that I get to for PDHs, is that our next Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast on February 25th, from 1 to 3, excited to have a number of executives and managers from the city of Philadelphia to talk about their private financing, alternative financing approach, stormwater management incentives, and public-private partnerships in Philadelphia, and driving affordable green stormwater infrastructure retrofits on private properties. Before I do that, I want to, and before I certainly thank our speakers today, not only for the wealth of information that was shared, but I think for what you're doing. And it's sometimes hard being the first out there, but we certainly need more leadership, not only here in Region 3, but around the country. And certainly EPA is very supportive, and many of our state agencies and other community-based organizations that are out there working for this. So I want to thank everybody, including those of you around the country that continue to push out to make these kinds of innovations happen and improve our communities. I'd like to remind everybody, and if someone can help me by pushing out the final survey, to please consider filling out the Webcast evaluation survey, which should soon appear on your Webcast console. This will also ensure, too, that you get your 2-hour, if indeed you have been on, hopefully you have, your PDH credit from WEF. And I want to take this opportunity to also thank WEF as being a very important partner in this. Seth Brown, who has been working closely with us and will be working with us on upcoming training, and we will be sure to make sure you are informed of that, and certainly join us for the next exciting upcoming webcast. We look forward to the commissioner, the water commissioner here in Philadelphia to talk about their approaches. So with that, I'm thanking everyone again for your time, and thanks to Adam and Larry and Roland. This has been great. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Dominique. And on behalf of all of us here in Prince George's County, we really want to thank you and Tetra Tech. We really appreciate all of our colleagues across the country listening in. We're happy to be the first out there. We're going to make some mistakes and learn some things. So, if we can be a resource, or if you have feedback for us, we're all ears, because some of these ideas we stole from some of you. So it's only fair. But thank you all, and we really appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.